Om apyantu mamangani vakpranaschakshuhu shrotamatra bhamindriyani cha sarvani. Sarvam brahma upanishadum mahabrahma nirakuryam mama brahma. Nirakarora nirakaranamastva nirakaranam me astu. Taratmani nirate ya upanishatsu dharmaste. Mayi shantu te mayi shantu. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi. May our bodies experience great health. May our life force flow unimpeded. May our minds expand in their capacity to know Brahman, the reality. For the Upanishads state that all existence is Brahman. Therefore, may we never deny Brahman. May Brahman never deny us. May there be no rejection of Brahman ever by us, we who are dedicated to the realization of the great self within. May all the good qualities cited in the Upanishads also abide within us. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Hiranmaye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam Tachubram Jyotisham Jyoti Tadyadatma Vidho Vidduhu. Shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, free of all taint, the essence of everything which all beings seek, either knowingly or unknowingly. There shines Brahman. It is that which the Guru teaches. It is that which the wise ones exult in. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvo Vahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishwamahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Welcome everyone to our final class in a series of 5 classes that we have been engaged in, all on the subject of Advaita Yoga. It's been being called by our original chart that we looked at in the first class, Gaudapada's non-touch yoga. Gaudapada was an illumined soul, so I pay my obeisances to him. He was the teacher of the great Adi Shankaracharya, and they all lived, he and his teachers, around 500, 600, 700 AD. That lineage has lasted as the Shankara order for ever since, so that's some 1400 years that we're looking at this great lineage moving on through India with its 4 pilgrimage spots that Shankara himself set up when he went around India, much like our Swami Vivekananda went around the world in this day and time. They both are very similar to each other. Each lived under 40 years. I think Shankara lived till he was 32, and Swamiji only lived till he was 39, and they compacted a whole bunch of beneficial work, study, meditation, and realization into their short lives, as seers are wont to do quite often. Some of them stay around longer to be exemplars, because as we often say here, we're not looking so much for saviors, we're looking for exemplars. The greatest souls really are exemplars. They want you to be the perfect, they want you to find the kingdom of heaven within you, and they want you to do it on your own steam. If they have to come back and help you, well, they'll do that, but they prefer to see sadhakas, people who practice yoga, people who practice Vedanta, who practice Buddhism, who practice in any religion, really, because these seers have engendered inside of themselves a universal mind that says, as it were, there's no such thing as a foreign religion. All religion is indigenous to your soul. So they've thrown open the doors, these compartmentalized ideas that people have about different cultures, different races, different borders, different religions, different genders. All of those wars have been put to peace inside of them, and they're living in a peace that passes all understanding. Whereas I just chanted Shanti, 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 peace on 3 levels: external, internal, and transcendent. That's why we say Shanti, Shanti, Shanti 3 times. It's that old familiar refrain, see, in the Vedantic circles. It's all about peace with your gross body, peace with your subtle body, and peace with your causal body. Or it's about the A, U, and M of Om, the great word. However you split it up, it always splits up nicely into 3s, and that also includes the worlds, the external world, the internal world, and the transcendent world. So these teachings being foundational to our cosmology and working their way into philosophy, and eventually, if we put them into practice, also transforming into what's called spirituality. And there's another good triputi: cosmology, philosophy, and spirituality. Then mature into what Gaudapada has been telling us is called non-touch yoga. Very interesting term. Some satsangs in the Sunday mornings that we're also live streaming. Welcome to our live streaming audience, by the way, from points around the world, hopefully. At satsang, people were talking about defining non-touch yoga and sending in questions and so forth. So basically, beyond the senses, beyond the 5 senses, no, beyond the 20 senses, beyond the 10 senses to start out with, because you have 5 external senses in that gross body, and then you have a subtle body that has 5 internal senses. So immediately you're starting out with 2 sets of 5s in our tradition, because they want you to know that the physical is not the only reality, that as you march into these kingdoms of heaven within you, that my Father's mansion has many chambers, that there are many levels to existence, and consciousness moves amongst them all. And the seers are just those beings that have become very facile at moving amongst the consciousness which is ever stable. Sort of, there you have again the dichotomy of non-touch yoga. It can't touch it, can't smell it, can't see it. As John said, nobody has ever seen God. So it's not something that you can apprehend with these 5 outer senses. It has to be, you have to tune those inner senses, and then finally you have to get to a single sense called the third eye, or if thine eye be single, thou shalt know the truth, in order to have a spectacular and unified vision. We call that beatific vision, or you can call it nirvana, or you can call it satori, or you can call it moksha or mukti or samadhi. It's been around, and it's a great awakener of souls. Even if you have a small glimpse of it for a short amount of time, an insight, we say. When you pile enough of those insights together, then you're heading towards that. Those are all straws that will break the camel's back. The house of cards will come falling down, and you'll have this unified vision called non-dual samadhi. Well, that's what causes beings to invent such sort of names for these yogas. Yoga is already oneness at hand. It's not something that you're trying to get into union with God. It just seems that way to you. The Advaita says that's your true nature already. So there are certain adjustments you're going to have to make if you've forgotten that. If you've fallen away from it in any way, then there's certain non-dual sadhana that you're going to have to practice. It's not just a matter of simplicity, as some people make it sound. Some people say, we're already perfect, we don't have to practice, but I never heard the great seers say that. In fact, they themselves, as exemplars, came here and practiced very hard sadhana in the face of everyone. You don't sit 49 days under a tree or go into a wilderness for 40 days or do things like that if you're not practicing very intense sadhana. You must be very focused and you must be very desirous of the highest vision. So that's a world-shaking sadhana. In our own case, our own ideal here is Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa did a 12-year earth-shaking sadhana in which he split open the curtain of Maya so that, let's see how many now, 5 million people could see the Lord. Let's see. That's how many are following him now. He used to say, in this age you will come here. So that can mean two things. You'll come to the heart, which is the chakra that has to open, so that the 3 chakras are transcended. Eating, drinking, and sex life is transcended, and you purify and you arrive to this chakra, this heart chakra. You'll come to love of the Lord. Or come to that avatar, which he was an exemplar of. Whatever the case may be, you will be guided through the curtain of Maya, and you'll be able to see your true self. There are echelons to that, as we just said, stations of consciousness, even at a very high level. You could say the difference between salvation and liberation. Some people are working for their salvation, but we've seen that salvation usually correlates with heaven, and this is some sort of a release from the trammels of everyday life. But it's those very trammels of everyday life, those trials, those tribulations and so forth, that make for good yogic practice. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, somebody would say, mankind has ruined religion. And he would say, why? He says, there's so many imperfections in religion. And Sri Ramakrishna would retort, but it's God who put those imperfections there, not mankind. And the man was surprised. He explained, he said, if your path was smooth and easy, you wouldn't build any muscles. So here you are in this physical frame, the Annamaya Kosha, we call it in Vedanta, the first of 5 sheaths, and you have 5 senses, and now you're learning you have 5 inner senses in dream tonight, and in meditation and so forth, and you're beginning to find out more about this psychophysical being. It's not just a physical being, or the body-mind mechanism. That's not just a body and a brain, but it's a body, brain, and mind. So you find out that the antakarana is there. The inner cause of everything is the mind. And Brahman is not a cause. That is, God is not a creator. So immediately you begin to step away from the idea of 7-day creation theories and 4,320,000,000 year evolutionary theories, and you start thinking everything is right now. Well, that's that eternal moment they've been talking about, that I've heard about in spiritual circles. And the Asparsha Yoga, that's the Sanskrit word for non-touch yoga, is precisely that. They've arrived at a place where they're in a non-dual state, and time has ceased for them. Space has been trimmed down. There are even songs in India, I could sing them for you. Practice meditation and cut time down. Cut space away. Because why? Because Nama, Rupa, Desha, Kala, and Nimitta, there's another 5 for you, another quintuplication process, has been on the minds of the Indian saints and seers and savants and saviors for time out of mind. That is name, form, time, space, and causality, or karma, if you want to call it that. Those are 5 things they looked into very deeply and came up with some very keen realizations about those things, how they needed to be transcended because basically, or you might say ultimately, they were illusory. Like the Rip Van Winkle syndrome. You see, the time just goes away for you in deep sleep, goes away for you in a coma, probably will go away from you in death. Only a semblance may remain of it, depending on how much of a semblance of your own ego you keep after death. If you've learned how to dissolve your ego, which the great teachers are inviting you to do and advising you to attempt, then you'll find that timeless place within you before you die. And the Zen Roshis, when they're sitting on the Zafu, they ask you that. Have you died on your cushion yet? If you're practicing Zazen, 2, 4, 6, 8 hours of meditation a day, they'll finally get a meeting with a Roshi, and he'll say, "Have you died on your cushion yet?" That's what he wants to know. If you had that death of the ego, has it gone away and gotten out of the way so you can see the divine reality behind it? Satori, in that tradition, it would be called. So even these great non-dual paths like Zen, Advaita Vedanta, and Buddhism, they have this very distinct cosmology, spiritual cosmology inside. And that's why I put up a chart like this. It's actually the name of my newest book, which is just about to come out. We finished proofing it, we hope. There's no more mistakes in it, or errors, typos. And it's going to come out both in paper form and in ebook form within a month or two, most likely. So it's called Dissolution of the Mind Stream, or Dissolving the Mind Stream. And it happens, the subtitle is Dissolving Name and Form in Time and Space and Causality into Ultimate Reality, into Brahman. So this is actually what people are doing all the time, but they're doing it unconsciously. They wake, they go to sleep, they dream, and they go into deep sleep, and there's no ego and no karma and no forms. And then they come marching back out to dream and back out to waking state. This is an unconscious dissolving of the mind stream, and then a projecting of the mind stream. And inside of that three-stage is another grand triputi that you have to meditate on. So they say, well, let's do this in meditation now. Let's do the same thing we did in sleep last night in meditation. And we begin to understand what non-touch yoga is about then, because it's not a matter of storing up for the future. Ramakrishna couldn't do that. It's not a matter of selfish grasping, of coveting the goods of your neighbor or coveting the goods of other countries. All of those things are going to have to go, so you're not going to be able to touch them. Not if you want the non-touch yoga. If you want beatific vision or satori, then you're going to have to start letting go of things. Probably a nice thing to give them away. This is father of yoga we'll look in today, Patanjali. He was actually Shankara's teacher in another form. Shankara's teacher was called Govindapada, and he was supposed to be the incarnation of the father of yoga at that time. Patanjali. So, father of yoga has made mention of those types of things. You see that this, he called them alambanas in his philosophy. Your first alambana is earth. Not earth to covet, not earth to enjoy, but earth to take as an object for meditation. You're never attached to it. The great souls don't have to detach because they never attached in the first place. Or if they want to attach and detach, they can do it at will, momentarily, and give it up. It's a great art. Non-touch yoga. So, second alambana is water, and the third alambana is fire, and the fourth is air, and the fifth is ether. And if you meditate on these 5 elements, which people are just taking for granted, and you use them as objects for meditation, all of a sudden you have your first connections in yoga. And the next thing you have to do is connect your senses to them. If you're living a disconnected life, have a fragmented mind, then here's your path, you see. I have to connect earth to my sense of smell, and water to my sense of taste, and fire to sight, of course, and touch to air, and ether to hearing. And all of a sudden I have a nice quintuplication process, two sets of 5s brought together and connected, and all of a sudden I'm starting to feel like I know who I am. I know where I came from. I know where I am. I know who I am. I'm beginning to get a sense of that, whereas before it was all far-flung, you see. It was all scattered. That's called kshipta, scattered mind. And the mind just prior to that was called muddha, dull mind. And the mind just after those two is called vikshipta, sometimes balanced, sometimes scattered. You may have noticed in your own mind, see. Sometimes focused, sometimes restless. Then the fourth state of mind is called ekagra. Eka is Sanskrit for one. all of a sudden your mind is in a state of oneness, or not two-ness. And then there's even a fifth state of mind called Niruddha. Now that would correlate very well with the non-touch yoga. Niruddha means pretty much made extinct, like nirvana. The ekagra is a flat line, but Niruddha is a line and a space, and then a line comes back, and then a space, and then a line. You're disappearing completely into samadhi, like our master did. Sri Ramakrishna was going into samadhi of different kinds all the time in front of many people, and it made him a very interesting soul to observe. There have been now many, many people who are writing about him because an avatar that lives in a present day age is a very interesting soul. You don't have to look back 2,000 years in Christ's case, or 2,500 years in Buddha's case, or even beyond, or even 1,300 years in the case of Gaudapada, or more, 1,500 years. So this is a lot of powerful names. You see, a lot of the greatest souls have, whatever they've called it, come and practiced and attained this non-touch yoga. So again, it's not just a matter of having to detach. It was never to attach in the first place. So they came here as past masters in full possession of their consciousness. The consciousness that other people have lost track of, you see. So they are then the best exemplars for this yoga, called Advaita Yoga, non-touch yoga, non-duality. There are various names for it. So if you put up a chart like this, the dissolution of the mind stream, it gives you an idea of the depth of Indian cosmology and also the underpinnings of its philosophy. That is, and I can't practice non-touch yoga when I call it up here because I have to touch this thing. But it's all based on the formless meditation of the Upanishads. I just chanted Apiyantu Mamangani Vak Pranaschakshuhu Shota Matra Balamindri Cha Sarvani. Basically, Upanishadam. There's Upanishads, the great scriptures of India, were mentioned twice in that sloka. So here we have Vedanta's and yoga's concurrence about the dissolving of the mind stream practice. It says, the classic and comprehensive meditation in yoga and Vedanta dissolves the elements into the senses. Follow the arrows. The senses into the subtle elements, called tanmatras. The subtle elements into the prana. It's also, tanmatras and prana are missing in our Western ideologies. We don't know much about them, so we have to fill them in with knowledge from other country. The prana is your life force. Man does not live by bread alone. It's that special energy. So the prana gets dissolved back into the mind. And the mind into the great mind. And the great mind into Om, the word. Find Om in yourself, they conclude, and dissolve that self into the great self called Brahman. So Om is in Atman, Atman is in Brahman, or in Paramatman, Supreme Brahman. This is a dissolution of the mind stream that you actually practice in your meditation. Why? Because at the time of death, that's what you do. Many souls, probably in this day and age, cannot go very far back into their consciousness. They don't know the kingdoms of heaven within them, so they may go as far as their ancestors. See? If whole nations worship ancestors, then you can see why they go to their ancestors. That's called heaven, right? Although I wouldn't call your ancestors such a heavenly bunch of people. You might have noticed. When they come out in families, there's problems. But what about souls that know those amber stairs of birth and death inside out? Say, how about Dalai Lama? Say 14 conscious births or so? So was able to give up his consciousness in in a sort of dissolution of the mind stream. The Tibetans would describe it a little differently, but it's known to them, yoga. So, and then coming out of that when they want to take on another body. So it's really the same dynamics that happen when you go from waking dreaming to deep sleep. And waking dreaming, deep sleep, you're just doing it without your consciousness in tow. Your consciousness is not there, your third eye is not opened and watching the process. So you practice honing your third eye. It's called your witness consciousness, and you cannot get to witness consciousness unless you can not touch things, not selfish grasping, you see, not holding on to things through whatever reason, from greed, from fear, or for just mere pleasure. You have to let go, let go, let go. The more you can let go, all the way back into the mind and ego complex, you see, because there's the ego right there, ahamkara. It's in the fourfold mind. And that's called the antakarana. If you look at the Sanskrit term, it means anta means inner, kara means cause. So they're already telling you that the mind's the cause for all this, not God. And if you put 5 billion minds together, you've got a powerful world. See, there's a lot of thought projection going on there, a lot of vibration, a lot of projection. And when half of them go to sleep at night, half of that gets withdrawn into a state of sort of root ignorance, because they're not going into the inner kingdoms of heaven within, or into the bardos, like the Buddhists say, consciously, are they? They're just giving up their consciousness and going into a state of formlessness, without your consciousness to bear. But samadhi, on the other hand, is going into formlessness in full consciousness of what's there. There are proofs for this, called the 6 proofs in Vedanta. And they make a great study. Analabdhi is one of them. It means non-apprehension. The pot is not there. So you know the pot is not there, but how do you know it's not there? Because it was once there. So immediately, non-apprehension or emptiness, something not being there, is compared to its opposite, right? So non-apprehension of a thing is a great facet to finding out the consciousness of a thing, the existence of a thing. Non-existence has to be there in order to show up existence, you see. So it's a very deep philosophical process that people would be very good for them to enter into. And there are 5 other proofs like that. Inference. Oh, I see smoke on that hill, so there must be fire. See? That's inference. That's a proof of existence. You take it and you apply it then, not to earth and smoke and fire, but you apply it to the inner worlds. Oh, all of this is smoke, you see, so there must be fire somewhere. If you have a creation, you have to have a creator. Where did all of this come from? From a void? You're going to tell me that? You should avoid the void. If you're a nihilist, you should annihilate nihilism. It's not getting you anywhere. Somebody came back and told you there was a void somewhere. Someone came back and gave it a name, so there must be a witness of the void. Sorry. It's not going to run. It's not going to wash. Not going to hold water. So inference is a very powerful way of inferring the presence of something that other people are not seeing or not believing or outright denying. All the best things are unseen or non-touch, you see. So they perfect this body-mind mechanism in its consciousness in various states. They cut their teeth on that kind of non-dual philosophy. And that's the creator of great teachers and gurus and sages and seers and rishis, knowers of truth. And then those pass along the truth to us in the form of the Upanishads, which now you're reading, you see, and hearing. All uninterpolated for thousands of years. Thousands of years. They're supposed to now found a planet that's so big that it would take centuries to take a plane around it. Imagine that. Centuries? A planet that big? Well, that's what I'm saying philosophically, you see. to come to know the vastness of your inner terrain, not just your outer terrain, is what the seers have done. Taken a long time to inspect it. And so dissolving the mind stream process is a very powerful meditation. Very seldom that you get instructions in meditation. You can go to some schools of Buddhism and get the Shinei meditation, you see, or the burning pillar meditation, or the Shamatha meditation. Or you can get the meditation on form in some spiritual circles, on the Ishtam, on Jesus, on Buddha, on Krishna, and so forth. Or you can go and try and get the non-dual meditation, you see, and get some instruction in that, as hard as that is to teach. Somewhere along the way, then, you'll find that you need to know what you're not in order to know who you are. Because you're trying to find your true nature, your true self that you've lost. So that's not going to work until you get rid of everything that you're not. The non-self has to go so that the real self can stand forward. Will the real self stand up? See? Well, it's standing up all the time, but there's too much in the way to see it. And people's attachment to 5 elements, to 5 senses, to the prana, and so forth, to their dreams, to states of existence which are not ultimately real. In fact, the Vedanta would be so brash as to call them unreal. Some schools would call them illusory. The Mayavadan school, for instance. So others would call it empty. Empty of what? Well, empty of any substance, because it's all vibrating particles, isn't it? Or how about empty of the ability to fulfill you? How about that? When objects that you're coveting that are made of the 5 elements get destroyed, stolen, you get bored with them, or they get taken away, how real can they be? Real means everlasting, not just temporary. I hope we all understand that when we say the word unreal in Vedanta, or emptiness in Buddhism, that we're talking about things that are ever-changing. And the ever-changing, again, one of the proofs of truth is sakshi, witness consciousness. And in order to notice that things are changing, you have to have something stable underneath it to have noticed that. Buddha, gave that teaching when he said he got out of the river and sat on the banks finally. So he means the river of time. If you're going around in the river of time, you never see the things that are in front of you or the things that are in back of you, because they're going in the same way. So all of a sudden you start concluding, you're great thinkers, you see, as thick as a brick, they say. They start concluding, that basically it's all linear. It's one long line. And nobody sees the connecting point, that it's all cycles. So dinosaurs before me, and who knows what the hell in front of me, you see. If we don't even believe in a future birth, we just go to a one lifetime scenario, then the whole thing is just linear, you see. But those beings who got out of the river and sat on the banks saw the same thing come around again enough times to know that it was all cyclic. It's just like if you go out here to Kauai and you stand on the top of the Nepali coast there and take that hike, you can almost see the curvature of the world. If you look out over the ocean, you can almost see it where it starts to curve. Well, a great soul, called Lord Buddha, Shakyamuni, did that with time. He got out and he looked at it long enough from a sakshi, from a witness standpoint, where we saw that it began to curve in the distance. And then he said, I see, it's a cycle. I think I'll meditate for 40 or 50 days on that to see if I can get off of it. So that's why he's called one of the greatest of all spiritual luminaries that ever visited the earth, is he found a way out of rebirth with his ancestors. He found a way to really help his ancestors by not touching them anymore, by letting go of them, not by attaching to them and getting all embroiled with them in their pathos, in their suffering, in samsara, in the Kala Chakra, in Maya. Look at how much you're going to have to let go of if you've attached, you see, already. If you haven't attached already, no problem. See? If you know that everything comes out of the mind in reverse fashion, and that's called evolution, but you don't know about involution yet, then you need to, as Christ told the fisherman along the river, get an internal life. Get a life, see. And that's precisely what the dissolution of the mind stream affords you. You can actually do it inside of 10 or 15 minutes in your head. You just memorize these things, run them in, and run them out again. At first, you're going to probably take more like a week or a month, to meditate on that alamban of earth. Everything about earth I could possibly know. Everything about water I could possibly know. In fact, if I'm meditating on water and I find out I fear it, then I can probably connect with my past lifetime where I drowned. And I know where my fear comes from, you see. So there's a lot that gets filled in as you begin this process. And you want to take it on wholeheartedly, 100%, right? You're making a commitment to this. A lot of times people enter into the spiritual life and they tell me, how much of a commitment do I have to make to this? I'm afraid I can't make that much commitment. That's why I'm asking. I just want you to know ahead of time. I'm not very good at committing. See? I said, well, you better learn how to be committed or else they're going to commit you. Eventually, you see. In a nice tight wrap jacket. See? Because the world will drive you crazy if you don't renounce it. The great souls all renounced it. They gave it up, hook, line, and sinker. You may have noticed. Those are the beings we call the greatest beings of the world. So maybe we start practicing a little bit of detachment, of renunciation. And so that all gets afforded to you too as you begin to let go of the 5 elements. Buddha called your 5 elements your 5 desires. You wanted a solid place to place your feet, so you invented earth. You projected earth, you and your cohorts, millions of them. And you wanted to slake your thirst and immerse yourself. There's water and drinks and all of that, you see. And the same with fire and air and ether. All of those things came out of the mind, the collective mind of people. They weren't created by God, and nature couldn't do it alone. Nature just drove you, the materials. So, Buddha also talked about the 6 transformations inside of the 5 elements. If you take on the 5 elements, then you're going to have birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death as a part of your package. How fun can that be? So those are your playmates at recess. You see, when you come along and project a world in space and time based on cause and effect. This is all cause and effect, you see. And you do it all so that you can get to the formless Brahman. You can actually immerse yourself in an ocean of bliss, not an ocean of liquid, and certainly not an ocean of suffering. Those are 3 different kinds of oceans. One's called Samsara Sagara, the ocean of samsara, and the other end is Ananda Sagara, the ocean of bliss. Which one would you want to plunge into, you see? And in the middle there's this ocean of water, you see, too, which is just telling you all the time, of the nature. But if you meditate on the ocean as part of that meditation on water you did, then you would be able to come to know water. And once you knew water, fear would go away. And same with land and air and ether. Ether is a great one for the scientists, you see, and for the great thinkers, if they acknowledge it, if they acknowledge its existence. In many systems of the world still, you have 4 elements, not thinking in terms of the 5th element yet. But the 5th element is where you find prana. That's why, I said man does not live by bread alone. That's where your ancestors went. And that's where you go when you exit the body. You go inward on the back of this great Garuda bird called prana, which takes souls out of the body and into the kingdoms of heaven and back again. If you don't know prana, then you don't have a vehicle. You don't want to be on the big island here without a vehicle. It's a big island. The buses aren't very dependable and so forth. In that same way, you don't want to leave home without it, you see. You will have to know this prana, because it carries your thoughts, and it doesn't just carry nutrients to your organs or make your lungs go in and out, as the Hatha yogis are teaching, but there's a whole different implication of prana that's called psychic prana. You're talking about running through nerves that are not just physical nerves, but are little tubular nadis, they're called, and energy flows through them. There are 100,000 of those inside of each gross nerve, the yogis say. So the prana is running along that, and that's where consciousness is going. Do you think consciousness takes up space? Does it take up space tonight in dream? If you run a race in a dream tonight, are you going anywhere? Are you winning an award? You're coming out of your dream exercised? See? Consciousness doesn't take up space the way we think of space. And that's the drawback of being attached too much to the idea of physical alone. The more you march in, the more you see everything slim down. The non-touch yoga, finally what occurred to you that, oh, I see, none of this is real. I can't touch it. I can't own it. I shouldn't covet it. I should be free. Novel idea there, you see. That I should actually think that I not only can be free, but my soul is free by nature. I am free. Ever free, never bound. So we approach this kind of realization of asparsha yoga or non-touch yoga by filling in some of the blanks, by connecting the dots, by following the trail of breadcrumbs back inside of oneself, all the way to the great self, which then gets dissolved into the ocean of Brahman. So that's sort of it in a nutshell, but if you want a sort of hands-on way of looking at it, Sri Ramakrishna is always good for that. He says, when a sugar cube dissolves in hot liquid, it first breaks in half, then into small chunks, then into granules, and finally there's nothing left but sweet liquid. Similarly, when the mind moves towards authentic meditation, it first contemplates the dual world, then the many teachings, then the living particles of its own intelligence, and finally enters full immersion. What remains then is one blissful, indivisible, homogeneous mass of pure conscious awareness. That's, of course, my own version of what Sri Ramakrishna, his analogy of dropping a sugar cube into a cup of tea. It just dissolves by chunks. Pretty soon granules, pretty soon you can't see it. We actually take our children here in this SRV Sangha when we get them on retreat and so forth, and we do this at the table in the morning. Let's eat. No, we're going to do an experiment first. Take this sugar cube, drop this into the cup, you see, and watch it and tell me what happens. Or take this cylinder of oil. Whale oil. Does oil and water mix? Yeah, it does, Babaji, they all say. So I say, just meditate for 45 seconds, please. And then you see the separation process, you see. And the teaching is, the soul and nature do not mix. It's not going to be a popular equation, because people are trying to mix themselves with nature all the time, and they think that that's what they should be doing. This life is about form. We should mix form in with everything, you see. But your soul is not going to agree with you. Ultimately, it's going to say, I cannot be matter. I'm sorry, matter is birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death, the Buddha told me. Matter is the 5 elements and the 5 senses with objects. And I don't know yet that all of matter came out of me. I think some God created it somewhere. Or that it evolved over 4 billion years. You see, I don't know that it's not linear. I know that it's cycle. In other words, it's there all the time. Matter's there. It's just there in a manifest state, and then when it disappears, like the dinosaurs, it goes into an unmanifested state. But you can't destroy the dinosaurs. Have you noticed? They're coming at you in movies, they're coming at you in books. They're in the mind. My point precisely. Everything is in the mind. These are called mind-only schools. And speaking about non-touch, one of the things they gave up touching was the idea of a 7-day creation theory, or eternal damnation, or 4,320,000,000 years evolutionary theory with nothing at the end. See? Or one lifetime with nothing at the end, but death. That's what they gave up in the non-touch yoga. And so the dissolution of the mind stream is just like that. You see, it teaches you, it slaps your hand for each one of them. Do not touch that. Do not touch that. Do not covet that. Do not own that. Be free. Your soul and nature do not mix. It only seems like they do. For about 45 minutes, or 45 seconds, or 45 lifetimes, if you will. How long will it take you to get out of the misconception that you have anything to do with nature at all? Well, only so long as you practice this dissolution to the mind stream and separate yourself from nature. The father of yoga called it Kaivalya. Now, everyone likes yoga. Anything that's come from India has been popularized. It's yoga. Unfortunately, it's only the physical side of it. But people are beginning, hopefully, to get into the mental side of yoga. That is, this antakarana, this mind, this fourfold mind, has projected everything, and it can dissolve it too, and it's doing that day and night. And it's doing that amongst not only the human beings, but the ancestors have their world too, and they're also projecting the ancestor world and keeping it together. See, the mind has a solidifying power. It's called earth. The mind has a liquefying power. It's called water. But the idea of earth and water in the mind of God, this cosmic mind here, see that here? Causation, solidity, liquidity, luminosity, homogeneity, all pervasiveness. Right there, that's earth, water, fire, air, and earth, but involved. It came out and it got evolved, and the power of solidity in the cosmic mind turned into earth here. It's all ideation. And you dissolve it just like that tonight in deep sleep. It doesn't take you, 15 minutes, say for my wife, to dissolve everything. She goes to sleep, she's in deep sleep like that. I know, because she stops breathing. And it freaked me out a couple times. So, and some people will take longer depending on their day. You see, they might dream a lot. And dream is just regurgitation of the waking state, and vice versa, you see. Gaudapada, the master of non-touch yoga, said, there's no difference between the waking and dreaming state. None at all, essentially. They're the same thing. It's a surprising statement to make. But it's true when you analyze it over time. Basically, you're doing the same things in dream, and you're projecting in dream, and you're using the same elements. They're just called your subtle body. And out here, you're doing that very same thing in the physical body. And time is one of those things that you're playing with. Time becomes out of your control in dreaming, doesn't it? You don't know, or one dream starts and the other one dream lets off. But that's what they want you to do when you get up early in the morning to meditate. First, that's why they want you to sit immediately. Don't wash your hands, don't eat, don't do anything. Get out of your bed and go and sit. And then if you do, you have the best opportunity of remembering what you just dreamed. And you can trace one dream to the dream before it, and that dream to the dream before that. And if you can do that one night or one day in your meditation, you can actually see where you came into form out of deep sleep. This is a sort of quick version of the dissolving the mind stream. You'll find out how you took form. And that's a great awakening for a person. Because essentially they're formless, you see. We're all formless. Death makes us formless, deep sleep makes us formless, meditation can make us formless, and samadhi definitely renders us formless. That is the unseated samadhi. Nirvikalpa it's called, where all mental fancies have been blown out. Buddha called it nirvana, made extinct. See? My mind was made extinct. I'm Buddha mind now, I'm no mind. So the very same non-touch yoga in Buddhism is there in Advaita Vedanta. So that is a quick dissolution of the mind stream that you can study. So that's why they want you to get up and meditate on your dreams. We're not trying to make our dreams lucid. The mind is such that some are lucid, some aren't. That's all. Some are good, some are bad, and some are mixed. Just like the waking state, you might have noticed. If you tried rendering your waking state lucid, not many people have achieved that, have they? So waking and dream state, it's the same problem. How are you going to make something that's imperfect by its very nature perfect? You should rather be looking for what is perfect by nature, which is you. See? Finding the self, self-realization, enlightenment, illumination of mind, nirvikalpa, satori, samadhi, moksha, mukti. There's enough words for it out there to, to suggest that it exists. What's in a word? A whole lot. A whole lot. In fact, everything is in the Word. Christ was trying to tell John about that. And John was a great theologian, right, amongst the apostles. He was the one that had a chance of understanding the kingdoms of heaven are within you, or my Father's mansion has many chambers. Are you talking just, symbolically here, O Lord? No, this is literal, John. Meditate on it. Go to Gethsemane and meditate on it. Because you have to open this all up inside of you. Well, long before John and Christ walked the earth, they were doing this kind of meditation. And they were encountering all the obstacles. And that's what this chart's about. I've shown you the dissolution of the mind chart enough. The live streaming audience can see it at the break, close up on their screens. And all of you can come up and see it closer up too, but it will be in that new book, Dissolving the Mind Stream. I'm not making a plug for it here. I'm trying to get you all to read it so that you can practice it. Practice makes perfect. Sadhana is akin to illumination. See, most people will get illumination by sadhana, not by grace. Grace is an unknown factor. Or you might say sadhana is grace, because the Lord and the Mother of the Universe is giving you the will to practice. You ever notice that? Oh, I feel great, I think I'll practice. Gee, I think instead of being committed, I'll become committed. See? I will know the truth, and the truth will set me free. So let's move, as we went through this fairly quickly, but it gives you the idea of how these quintuplication process, they call it the quintuplication process because it's all in fives. That's how things rolled out, in fives. See? And there are many great teachings about it that come in threes. And then most of the impediments come in twos, called duality. So you use the threes to calm down the twos so that you can understand the fives, so you can get to the one. It's basically kind of a nutshell version of it. Please look at that more later. We've had it in class before and studied it quite a bit, but I want to show you Father of Yoga's idea of, I have it up there. Because he takes up more of the problems. This doesn't really, the dissolution of the mind stream doesn't really throw at you the 9 vikshepas and the 5 kleshas. And I mean, Father of Yoga came along and said, you need a practice and you need to know what you're doing. Just a highfalutin philosophy might not be everyone's cup of tea, see. This is a kind of combination of cosmology and philosophy, and this is for studious people. This is for people who are not averse to getting in there and memorizing these things, learning the Sanskrit terms and the English or whatever language you have to learn them in, and putting it into practice in their meditations. Basically, you're called Gyanis and Janis, people who study and people who meditate. And if you put Gyanam and Jnanam together, you've got a very powerful soul there who's knocking at the door of reality. And pretty much is easily leaving relativity behind, you see. But if you're talking about Father of Yoga having compassion on the rest of us, then you're talking about an 8-limb system that you can take up. It's not that you're not going to have to memorize there and do some study, but it does help you familiarize yourself with the kleshas. Very first thing, 5 obstacles. The 5 hells, Vedavyas called it. It's interesting because hell is not a location in space and time, like it is with fundamentalist Christians, for instance. There's no devil. There's no hell. It's all in your mind. We just said it's all in your mind. We mean it. A psychiatrist may see you on the couch, you sit and say, oh, it's all in your mind. And if you're a Vedantist, you'll sit up and say, yes, you just said a mouthful, doctor. It definitely is all in our mind. I'm a Vedantist, you see. I know that everything originated with the mind. The mind's the culprit. The mind's the projector. But it can also be your friend and withdraw everything, and it can do this consciously. And that's called a master, a past master. And you can take as many lifetimes in consciousness as a bodhisattva, like Dalai Lama, for instance. That's the point, you see. I know the stairs inside, up and down, not just the top stairs and the bottom stairs, the heaven and the earth of it all, but I know all the steps in between too. So when I die, or when I go into meditation, or when I go into deep sleep, I take my consciousness with me, thank you very much. Don't leave home without it. And your home, my father's mansion, is vast. You're speaking about a planet that it takes centuries to fly around, but this is a bunch of worlds that are much more vast than that. It's not just vibrating physical particles. You're talking about pranic particles, mental particles, intelligent particles, thought particles. See, this gets very subtle and very vast, and it all tapers down. As you go inside, you realize consciousness is all pervasive. It isn't spatial like we think of it out here. When you've come here, and you'll find this out if you meditate on air and ether, this is spatial. But when that space all goes away inside of you, or it gets transformed into a dream space, you see, then where is it? A man running a race in a dream, you see. Where is it? I'm going nowhere, but I'm doing all this stuff, you see. So then if the waking dream state is the same as the waking, you come out here and you say, gee, maybe I'm going everywhere here and I'm going nowhere too, you see. Doesn't it sound like your life sometimes? People complain about it. Oh, I've got to go do something, see. But they should be doing all of those things from non-doing. So I'm stable, I'm still, I'm peaceful, I'm content, I'm immovable, see, I'm all-pervasive. These are your mantras in spirituality. And you take them seriously and you repeat them to yourself. It's another one of those proofs of truth, I call it. You see, I call it Shabda, testimony of the scriptures and the seers. So that all of that, you see, I've put out in front of me, and I've gotten all of this behind me. So let's look at some of this, the 5 obstacles that you would encounter if you started meditating on earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and your attachments to objects, and your body and its functions and so forth, and taste and flavor and visibility and tangibility and audibility, all these things that people get so attracted to, but never connect and bring together into comprehensive knowledge. So don't connect the dots back to the source. Those things have these problems attached to them. Klesha means impediment. So you have avidya. This is a very special list. You're not going to find this by going to school. You see, you're going to have to go find a teacher and say, it's not like going up and saying, well, I'm ignorant, teach me math, teach me mechanics, see, or something. No, when you go to a guru who says, I'm ignorant, will you make me literate? He says, no, it's not like that. Ignorance of your true nature is what we're talking about. If you knew your true nature, you'd know everything. The greatest question of all time ever asked to the rishis by one of their students was, the student came into the circle, all right, what would you like to know? And he said, teach me that one thing by which knowing everything else is known. And the rishis went, well done. That's the best question I've ever heard. See, jumps to the chase. Teach me that one thing by knowing all else is known. Well, that one thing is the Atman. It's the true nature, Buddha nature they call it. Is your soul with a capital S, not your ego soul, your mind soul, but your true soul, your all-pervasive, immovable, non-touch soul, you see. So knowing that, everything else is known. So the opposite of that, vidya, is avidya. Avidya means ignorance. Vidya means knowledge of my true self. Avidya means I don't have the foggiest. My parents didn't have the foggiest. Their parents didn't have the foggiest. Generations that I came from didn't have the foggiest. They never heard of the word Atman or soul. Or if it was a soul, it was a soul that went from heaven to earth to hell. I'm not interested in that soul. Because I've heard that the soul is immovable. It's that soul I want to know about. So I must get rid of root ignorance. That's the first of all hells, not knowing my true self. Because all the seers have been taking on bodies, and they're doing fine, see. But I haven't been taking on a body consciously, and I'm not doing so well here. In fact, it's beginning to occur to me that I've probably had many lifetimes not doing so well. See. Some people, you give them the teaching of reincarnation, you say, great, I can live more lives. See. But you can live more lives committing the same errors, committing the same mistakes, having the same pains at birth, having the same pains at death, and growing and getting disease and illness. Sometimes they say, oh, Buddhism, it's just so pessimistic. But they want you to man up. They want you to know the reality of the situation. You can't practice non-touch yoga or extreme detachment until you let go of these things. If everything exists in the mind, then so do all your diseases. You're going to go to medicine? The healers have told me that they have never cured one disease, ever. It's all morphed into another disease. So there's no disease that's ever been cured. That's what the healers are saying nowadays. It's all morphed into something else. Sounds like Maya to me. Run to plug up like there, and another, leak happens over here. You're trying to build your house on shifting sand. Sounds like atoms, molecules, quarks, subatomic particles all changing at a billionth of a second to me. You don't build your house there, you build it on bedrock. Bedrock starts with faith, and then it ends up, in that source of all existence. Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father, Tathagata Garbha, Pragyaparam, Paramatman. There are plenty of names for it, which means it must exist. It's inference. There's smoke on that there hill. So avidya, egotism is next, ashmita. That's right about there in the fourfold mind. Your ego is lurking. Is it ripe or unripe? That's the first thing you'd be asked if you went into his company, Sri Ramakrishna. You've got apakva hamkara, or have you pakva hamkara? Almost sounds local, right? So, has your ego been ripened yet? Have you given it away? Have you surrendered? Have you let go? Are you a candidate for non-touch yoga? Or for Brahman? For realization of Brahman? Wants to know that first thing. Just like the Roshi wants to know if you've died on your pillow yet, you see, and had that little ego death. So that ego is a problem. It's so much of a problem that both Patanjali and Vedavyas, the fathers of yoga and Vedanta respectively, have mentioned it as one of the kleshas. Klesha is an impediment to spiritual progress. A major one. The other one is attachment and aversion. People can't get free because they're being distracted by attachment and then aversion. Then they ping-pong back and forth. This is a duality. Dvandva mohena, Arjuna, is what Krishna says to Arjuna on the battlefield. You must beware of the deluding pairs of opposites. Why? Because they keep you from thinking about reality. And you build a habit of that. So Ramakrishna says, pretty soon you never think of God even by accident. Now, that's really bad, you see. God is your true nature, by the way. Sorry if I'm using a loaded term here for some people. Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father, pure conscious awareness, timeless, deathless consciousness. I can use a lot of other words. God is simple. So, that formless reality that's birthless and deathless, that reality. You speak enough about relativity in this country, Don't you know there's an opposite to that too? It's called reality. Can there be a relativity without a reality? Form and formlessness go together, bondage and liberation go together. Can't relativity go together with something called reality? Why aren't you approaching reality? Why aren't you acknowledging that it exists? Why are you so afraid of it? Why are you running away from it? I'm talking to the quantum physicists. I'm talking to the doctors, the lawyers, the politicians. But usually those are the ones that won't listen to a crazy person like me, see. If you're spiritual, you're considered crazy in this world. Oh, they're into religion. He's got religion. See. Well, we don't got religion with a small r, I can tell you that. In Vedanta, we have it with a capital R. And we're willing to stand forth and prove by all the old books out of India that this is true, that this is real, that this is a science, more powerful than your own science, and that thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have followed it, and there are many methods. Vedanta has one, yoga has one, Buddhism has one, Jainism has one, Sikhism has one, Tantra has one, yoga has one, I said that. Vaishnavism has one, Shaiva Siddhanta has one, Shaktism has one, Sankhya has one. It's not just one book and one prophet we're talking about. India is the mother of all religions. They didn't give her that name for no good reason. Hundreds of great souls came out of her, and they're still coming out. And hundreds and thousands of scriptures came out, not just one book that you have to go around thumping. And these books that came out, they're basically based in non-duality. They know the difference between the revealed scriptures and the ordinary scriptures. That's one of the earliest teachings in India. Revealed scriptures have nothing to do, they're non-touch, see, with the world. They're not going to tell you how to solve your problems or be concerned with who owned what tent peg in what century before Christ, who it got passed to. They're concerned with the relationship between the individualized soul with the Supreme Soul. That's it. If you have to even come down that far, you're beginning to get too close to touch. You see, you really should have just stayed at Brahman is. Brahman is consciousness. Let's study Brahman as consciousness. Those kinds of ideas. They don't come down from that, the non-touch yogis. Why should they? That's called the ocean of consciousness. You think you go empty there? You get unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss there. See? You get the peace that passes all understanding there. You get the bliss of formlessness that's full, full, full. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnabadachate. It's infinite, it's full. Everything in it is full. It's the essential substance, consciousness, Chaitanya, out of which everything sprang, via the vehicle of the word. It's non-vibrational, non-touch. When it begins to vibrate, it has to use its word. And that's called origins. You shouldn't have based your religion on origin. You should have based it on the Almighty Father. You should understand origins and the cosmology that comes out of origins, out of the word, Om, and there it is, there, Pranava, Shabda, Shvota, if you look into the Roman and Greek philosophy that you were talking about this morning, they have words for that. See, the word, it's a vibration, and that's going to give rise to the cosmic mind. And from cosmic mind, that's going to trickle down to the collective and individual mind. And consciousness is going to trickle down further using prana to these subtle elements, and from the subtle elements and the 10 senses and 5 elements are born. So it all comes out like that, not as a creation, but as a projection. And it goes back into you nicely, just like in a dissolution. You do it. This is your business. It's not God's business. God cannot create anything because it was never destroyed in the first place. Everything exists at all times. It's just a matter of whether it's manifest or not. The ocean exists whether there's waves or not, right? It's the same way here, vibrationally speaking. Brahman is the foundation for manifestation and non-manifestation, but itself does not get involved. That snake there, see, is still. So still that I think I'll go poke it with a stick, because I think it's dead. So I poke it and it wriggles. The stationary snake and the power of its wriggling are one thing. So that's like Brahman and its power of movement. They're one thing. It's all vibration, you see. The movement is impetus, a vibration, like speaking a word. So Om is the king of all words. It's very key to non-touch yoga because Gaudapada, who coined the term, coined it on the Mandukya Upanishad, and that's 12 slokas long. You can read it in 5 minutes. You can read an Upanishad in 5 minutes, and it's 12 slokas about Om. The first sloka is, everything is the word. Everything that was before was the word. Everything that will come in the future is nothing but the word. It's all the word. And the first sloka just lays it out for you. Everything manifested and unmanifested has come from the Word. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. If Christ didn't already know that, which he probably did, he got it from India, and he went there, most likely. Or he heard it and he said, oh, that's a nice way of putting it. See? And then he told John. And John said, what the hey? What are you talking about? You see? Go to Gethsemane and meditate on that, because you're such a great theologian. How can you be a great theologian or cosmologist if you don't know the kingdoms of heaven within? And how can you know them unless you study them in your mind? As coming out of yourself, John. Not out of anything else but yourself. Because you find the word inside of the self, the tradition says. It's humming there. You can hear it. I'll make a disclosure here. I heard it in the crib. And it frightened me. My first memory on earth is hearing that. And it was associated with this huge vortex that was going around, and I was being sucked into it. And I remember my mother opening the door and coming in because I was crying. And later on I heard it through my teenage, you see. It's a vibration. It's like 1,000 bumblebees, they say, humming inside. So the yogis hear the word, the seers see the light. You see, depends on if you're visually oriented or audibly oriented. But those two senses are very powerful. Hearing, seeing, you know that. And hearing goes with ether. And sight goes with fire, light. So those connections are important for you. You must make them to be a consummate yogi or yogini. See? You must make those first in your mind. Because all of these problems started in the mind, so you have to do away with them so you can get to the real mind, from ordinary mind to original mind. Or you might say from dull, diseased mind, scattered mind, to ordinary mind, and from ordinary mind to cosmic mind, and from cosmic mind to original mind, and from original mind to no mind. There's a nice quintuplication for you. 5 kinds of mind, you see. And in that original mind, that no mind is everything in potential. Just all tucked back inside of you like it's a great chest of drawers, you see. And Divine Mother ironed everything and put it back in there. So now dinosaurs will come out again at some cycle. Elvis will come back in some cycle. You see. Oh no, don't open that drawer. All nicely ironed and put back in the cosmic chest of drawers called the Mahat, the great mind, in potential. You realize it's not physical anymore, it's a seed. And everything is a seed. And it comes out, and that seed is vibrating inside with the word. So this was known by the king of Christendom, see, before there was Christianity on earth. This was known by him. And he said, you know, he said, in the beginning was the word. But he knew there was no beginning. Gaudapada later, 700 AD, 500 AD maybe, says non-origination is the bottom line to everything. There is no beginning, middle, and end to anything. It's cyclic. Everything is cyclic. The only thing that doesn't cycle is that foundation, the ocean of Brahman, or Buddha nature. It's still, it's stationary, it's peaceful. It's peace beyond understanding. It's samadhi, it's satori, it's kaivalya. You have to separate yourself from nature to find that out. That's why they listed everything. So you could say, oh, that's what I have to separate myself from. Father of Samkhya Yoga didn't, in the earliest times, elucidate 24 cosmic principles, or 25 in sets of quintuplication processes, just to show that he wasn't a listless person, you see. That's the joke about in spiritual circles. How do you know a Samkhya yogi? He speaks with a lisp. You see. That is a list. So they know this cosmology. And the Vedantists and the yogis and the Buddhists came along and said, marvelous what he did. I think we'll use it. The Shaivites came along and added 12 more cosmic principles on top, so now there are 36 instead of 24, because they wanted to explain the causal realms, you see. Not just the physical subtle, but they wanted to go into the causal. What happens to a soul when it goes really deep undercover? Deep, deep, deep undercover. See? Under the cover of Maya, through the net of Maya. So it's a marvelous, marvelous system, and it's been there in philosophy ever since, and Christ knew about it too. So the word is origins, but beyond the word, in the beginning was with the word, then it was with God, but what happened when it was God? See, there's a triple teaching again. It was with God in the beginning. It was in the beginning, then it was with God. So a slight separation there, wasn't it? And then it was God. Om is here, third eye. It has two apertures, two petals. One goes out and one goes in. We're not talking about, into my brain and out into air. If you study an object and you study it down to its particles, you're going further out with the object. I hope they find that out. That's why it's empty out there, vibrating at a billionth of a second. That's why they have no substance in it. To really go inward with an object is to go into it, the thought you had of it. That's where it started, not outward into the particles. You're going to be lost in space out there. Drilling over a planet that it takes centuries to fly around. So to really know an object is to go inside and find its origin. It happened in my mind first. Like an inventor invents something. Didn't it happen in his mind first? And then he put it into manifestation. So the great architect of the universe, the cosmic mind, God has a mind too, but he's not his mind just like you're not your mind. The great architect of the universe thinks in projection style, and everything happens. It's not created, preserved, and destroyed. It's projected, sustained, and withdrawn. And there's no birth and death in it. Birth and death is an illusion. And so here you have it. Attachment and aversion, we were just talking about, the final and lowest hell you can fall into is clinging to life, or call it fear of death. Either way you call it, it's the same thing. Non-touch yoga is not clinging to life, is it? You let go of life. How did Christ put it? He so who loves his life shall lose it. But he who hates his life shall get it again in eternity. See? If you love your life, you'll lose it, right? You're attached to it. You're clinging to it. But if you let it go, you'll get it again in eternity. That means two things. You can either take as many bodies as you want, and by that time you'll be doing it consciously, like some of our great souls, or you'll just realize the bodiless state and you won't come back into form again. In my tradition, that's called Jivan Mukta, liberated soul. He's a master of the process. Or it's called a Videha Mukti, forget the process. Brahman is not a process. I'm going to stay in Brahman, thank you very much. I will be formless. I'm not coming back again. Have no hope for me, for the world, forevermore. I'm gone, and I'm gone forever. You see, one great song in India sings. So death is no problem. It's like these beautiful songs they sing. Shukir Vashana Karo Arkadin, Shukir Vashana Karo Arkadin, Taji Anyobo, Kali Kali Bo, Manobo Jano Mojadin, Botui, Shukir Vashana Karo Arkadin. About death he sings, Kamala Kanta Haye Branta Bule Shonama Shanadin, Kamala Kanta Haye Branta Bule Shonama Shanadin, Bare Bare Ashi Dukha Rashi Rashi, Bare Bare Ashi Dukha Rashi Rashi, Jatan Shabe Arkadin, Shukir Vashana Karo Arkadin, Shukir Vashana Karo Arkadin. It says, bewildered by Maya, Kamalakanta is forgotten the 9 months and 9 days of suffering in his mother's womb. Forgot all that pain that it took to get here as I came down out from my true nature and took on a body made of 5 elements. Forgot about that. Is that merciful? That I don't remember that? Or is that routing me into more of the same all the time? See? Should I face off my pain or should I forget it? Sort of the question the aspirant after attainment of non-touch yoga has to ask him or herself. See? He says, misery and pain is the outcome of relative existence. How many more lives of ignorance can I bear? So here's Kamalakanta's take on it. And through his realization, he worshipped Mother Kali, and Mother Kali revealed to him, see, just like for Sri Ramakrishna, Mother Kali was his ideal too. Found out the Divine Mother of the Universe would reveal these things to him if he entered deep into meditation, if he didn't cling to things, if he let them go. And the best way to learn that is through meditation, isn't it? Study and meditation. A little devotion helps. And cutting your teeth on the world helps too. See, that's where you'll get rid of these kleshas. You have to come full circle and test them in the furnace, in the crucible of the world. These are called kleshas, they're to be overcome. So 5 impediments like that. And I didn't mean to take that much time on them, but as this dissolution of the mind stream happens, you'll see that these are the things that the consummate yogi and yogini is going to face off again, till finally he begins to reach these secret gateways of yoga and these levels of mastery. We'll look at that after the break. Live streaming audience, as usual, may view these at the break. You may also come up and look at them. We will have some little refreshment here at the SRV ashram in Honaka'a, out in the middle of the Ganga Pacifica, with the sun shining on us and the ocean telling us, I am formless, but I can take form, but I can also give it up. I'm a master. See? So may we all watch the ocean and find out the real meaning of what it's telling us. And the suns, the billions of suns in the sky. And I can't quite come to the break yet because I'm inspired about all this. Now, I will let you all go and we'll Zoom in 15 minutes. Namaste. In the remaining 1 hour approximately, we'll continue making our way through the non-touch yoga as a great darshana. A darshana means a clear way of seeing, like Vedanta, Buddhism, yoga. As a great darshana would see the non-touch yoga. As I said before, it's really, I think, quite a mistake to say, I'm already perfect so I don't need to practice, which is sort of, in my way of thinking, a sort of pseudo-Advaita. It's not really the real platform of non-duality and what Gaudapada meant by non-touch yoga. It's that more like a phrase that we coined early on. In fact, it was in our very first newsletter. It was called Advaita Vedanta Sadhana. And we took that to India, and some of the Swamis saw it and said, that's a beautiful phrase, Advaita Vedanta Sadhana. If you're already perfect, why do you have to practice? Well, because you haven't realized your perfection yet, most likely. And that's going to be a matter of you assessing your own life and seeing if you stumble, or if you fall, or if you back off, or if you're not so cocksure of yourself at some point in the future. Because I've seen many people, great meditators in the beginning, then fall away from meditation, and great students and fall away from the scriptures. It seems like this inability to take something up, make it our own, and live in it is a difficulty here. Vivekananda, when he saw the Americans in 1893 and got to know them a little bit, he used the phrase, straw on fire, for us. You can probably draw your own conclusion for that, but it would be that we flare up with anything new, but that we don't hold it and practice it. Whereas he said, if you get an Englishman on your side, he'll be with you forever. That stayed steady. So some of his devotees that went to India with him were English beings, men and women, like Nivedita and so forth. So Sister Nivedita and others. So this stick-to-itiveness with the philosophy is based in practice. We have to bring it full circle into our life. That's the karma yoga aspect of it, and test it in the crucible of everyday experiences. That's what Vivekananda wanted. The teaching was Shruti, hear it, Yukti, reason about it, Anubhav, get some direct spiritual experience around it. But then they have Satchatkara. That means to bring it back into life. So he said that's the part that you don't hear in the Triputty. There's a fourth part of that particular teaching. He said you can't leave the Vedanta in books and temples. It won't. That's not coming full circle. You have to bring it into life, because there you'll test it, and there you'll become an exemplar of it, hopefully. And that's precisely the point here, is that pseudo-Advaita, you could say I'm perfect, and then just sit there, and nothing really happens, you see. But if they see you practicing hard, striving to gain your realization, that's going to make a huge impact on a greater amount of souls. And that's really Divine Mother's grace. She'll save a great avatar, even a great soul, come to earth. Many of them, they say, were hardly even known, especially in their own time. Just a few disciples, you see. And it wasn't until afterwards that it began to become known. But in some cases, she'll save a soul, and they won't be even aware of their own avatarhood until she lifts a certain subtle veil. Then all of a sudden, big, powerful enactment of divinity in front of thousands of people, where if it had happened before, it would have only been in front of a few people, or maybe not happened. It would have become either premature or belated kind of thing. So auspicious timing then becomes one of the really important facets of Vedanta teachings. Auspicious timing. Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarva Dashadake. I could sing it for you. It's the auspiciousness of the most auspicious. The one who knows the perfect right timing for that, Mother herself. So, Devi Padam, we take refuge at the wisdom feet of the Divine Mother of the Universe and put everything in her hands. In fact, a beautiful song about that, since it's come up, goes, Shakale tomari icha mai kartumi tomar karma tumi karma loke karakari pangure langao giri kare doma brahma pada kare kara adogami ami jantra tumi jantri ami gar tumi garani ami rata tumi rati jemni chalo temni chori shakale tomari icha. Icha means will. It's the divine will. So this song, one of Sri Ramakrishna's favorite songs, says, "Oh Mother, you, everything happens by thy own sweet will, in your own sweet timing. You are the self-will one and the mother of all living beings. All work belongs to you, others only call it their own. You trap the powerful elephant in the mire, but cause the lame man to scale the highest mountain. On some you bestow the highest blessings, other you hurl into the world of suffering. I am the chariot, you are the charioteer. I am the house, you are the indweller. I move as you move me. I think as you think through me." So it's all about non-agency. Again, non-touch, isn't it? You give up the sense of agency. I don't do my actions. Mother is working through me. And that can't be pretended. So in the same way, this Advaita Vedanta cannot be pretended. You must do that sadhana, that special Advaita Vedanta sadhana, which is internal. It's not like, say, Hatha Yoga or breathing exercises and all of that. That has its place. But the Mano Yoga is supreme. The Buddhi Yoga is superior. These are yogas of the mind we're at. Because if we can purify the mind, then everything on down will be pure. But we're starting down here and trying to purify senses and objects and work through some of these kleshas, you see, that we were just looking at, and trying to get to the mind that way. We, as we were talking about at the break, we need to come back here and be reborn with a pure mind. Pure mind is God, Sri Ramakrishna said. Pure mind is Buddha mind, Lord Buddha said. They both concur on that. See, some 2,000 years apart. So that beautiful song then was, Sri Ramakrishna heard that, he would go into ecstasy and start having tears. Yes, that's Divine Mother, the supreme will. All work belongs to her, but others only call it their own. So part of what you're letting go of then is agency of your work, ownership around objects, and letting go of this subtle line of demarcation between creature and creator, matter and spirit, God and mankind. Erase those lines of demarcation. Gone. The line of demarcations between religions. There is no such thing as a foreign religion. They're all indigenous to my soul, and my soul is your soul. There's only one soul here. What do you think indivisible, homogeneous means when they use it in relation to the soul of mankind? Like there's many of them out there? Oh, there's many little souls with small s's, little egos, you see. But the Supreme Soul, there's only one of those. That's Advaita. And you have to realize it by Advaita Vedanta sadhana. So there is a very special, very subtle, very non-touch kind of practice that happens with great souls. When Shankara, who was a student to Patanjali in another lifetime, and who was Gaudapada's student, came to earth and lived only 32 years, they said, "You're a perfected master, why are you still practicing?" Number one, I want to keep the mirror of my mind wiped clean so that I can have the best vision of God at all times. I don't want any distortion on my lens. See? So the mind is kind of a lens. The mind is so important on your way to God and your way down to earth. You see, the mind is the pivotal place. The mind is everything, my child. That's how Holy Mother my teacher's teacher put it. And number two, I want to be an example for everyone of how to take a teacher and how to do spiritual effort. Those are the two reasons why a perfected soul would continue to do sadhana, even if he didn't need it. So, some words about Advaita Vedanta sadhana, and that we understand non-touch yoga, Advaita yoga, in the most clear and succinct possible way. So then if we climb up this chart again, Patanjali is not throwing these things at us to depress us. Maybe it's really yoga that should be called pessimistic, because he's looking at all these impediments. So the next are the four distractions. Dukkha, Dharmanasya, Angame Jayatva, and Shvasa Prashvashaha. These are great 7-8 syllable Sanskrit words. Basically, sorrow, despair, unsteadiness of limbs, and uneven breathing. You might have come upon those in your practice. Now, this isn't a list for parents and children, worldly people. You have restless limbs and your parents don't do anything about it. They just say, settle down. Or they let you run wild. See? So when it comes to trying to sit like this and you can't find a good place for your arms, or you always want to shift your body and you haven't mastered your asana yet, and you have to try and get that ekasana position where you can sit like this for hours without moving. Why? Because Brahman is immovable, and you want to realize I and my Father are one, right? So you're going to have to be like Brahman. That's why they sit in meditation for 6-8 hours a day, or 49 days under a bo tree or something, because they've learned that ekasana position, and now everything's fine. See, now I don't have to worry about any of the tattvas, any of my problems that arise in my mind. I've got them mastered. Now I can see the light. There's nothing in the way. But look at how much is in the way in the meantime. I know people that have meditated for 10 or 20 years and they still haven't really made the first step towards really meditating yet. They haven't really concentrated yet. And they can't concentrate because they can't remove their mind from objects. That's the 5th, 6th, and 7th limbs of yoga right there. 5th is pratyahara, a kind of restlessness. So you can't take my mind off the objects. And I'm sitting there in meditation, what's for dinner? My knees hurt. I wonder, what's going to happen tomorrow? Whatever. Past, present, and future all going through their mind. Or somebody insulted me yesterday and I'm spending my hours thinking about that. Meanwhile, God's waiting at the door. When's he going to get busy and meditate on me, you see? So then the next thing is concentration. If you can take your mind off objects, you can concentrate. If you can concentrate, then you can meditate. And if you can meditate, you can get samadhi. That's the 8th limb. So how are you ever going to even meditate when these other steps are not together yet, are not in place, are not mastered? So that's the idea with things like uneven unsteadiness of body. I have to get my body comfortable. I have to be able to master a position and stay in it. One would be nice. If you're doing a lot of asanas in order to make your body flexible and get longevity or something, then you're just pretty much getting asana vasana, I call it. Vasana means desire, asana means a position. You're getting a desire for more positions. But the great souls have said, ekasana, one is what you need, this one. When you spread the legs like this, it opens the spine. Point of fact, physically and metaphysically and spiritually, the kundalini is already beginning to come up your spine if you can sit like the Indians used to. I'm not talking about the Eastern Indians, I'm talking about the American Indians. There's something about this tripod position that is perfectly suitable for spiritual life. The yogis have adopted it, you see. So if you're a chair sitter, like most of the Westerners are, then make sure that you sit with your spine straight so that energy can come up. See, it's not like this is your only option, but this is asana, this is ekasana, your one position that you want to adopt. And therefore, that kundalini, that special energy, can begin to rise up the spine. There's less impediment. And you want to attract her. You see. You want to attract her to come up the spine. Not with cheap bribes. But with philosophical study, for instance. She likes that. She's the mother of wisdom. What do you think's going to attract her? Wisdom. She wants to see you get it. Oh, there's a soul that's awakening. He's gotten rid of his fear of death, you see, and so forth. He's willing to give his ego away. That's what most people experience as death. They think, my ego dies, I'm dead, because they think they are their ego. Your individual self, ahamkara. But what if you know that you're the Atman and you're birthless and deathless? What's the ego to you? Just ripen it and let it go, so that it doesn't get in the way. Otherwise it'll insinuate itself on everything you do. You might have noticed in egotistical people. So all of this, then you get to these 9 impediments. You see, imbalanced mind had to deal with these. Dull mind has to deal with these. Now what are the 9 impediments? They're called vikshepas, antaryayas. Those are 2 words Father of Yoga used for them. Vyadhi, disease, physical. Sthana, complacency. Samshaya, doubt. Pramada, negligence. Alasya, idleness. Avirati, sensuality. Bhranti darshana, philosophical confusion. Alabdha bhumikatva, inability to make progress. And anavasti tattvani, backsliding. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. These are physical, mental, intellectual, and spiritual impediments. 9 of them. So these are what the great holistic, the original holistic healer, you might say, of that time, Patanjali, was it. People are studying Ayurveda now. Well, Patanjali cleared that up for them. That's why. They found out about the rasas and the dhatus and the karanas of the body-mind mechanism. That's all yoga. He lists them for you. I think they're here, but he lists them for you. So now people are saying if they're going to study Ayurveda healing, Indian healing, they're going to have to know the rasas, dhatus, and karanas and how to clear them up, how to treat them. So Patanjali was interested in holism, not just, oh, let's exercise and eat good food and do lots of asanas. That's just the physical part. Holism means now my mind and my intellect and my soul, my spirit, has to be educated. And actually, if I had have come here into the body with that education, I would not have to be worrying about eating right, getting into asana and so forth. Of all the illumined souls that I met, the few that I thought were really inhuman, illumined, they did not have any hatha yoga practice going on. They didn't need it. They came here perfected, you see. And so it's a matter of trying to help you fry your fish, you see. Get you into yoga, because yoga is already their true nature, you see. So they're coming out from perfect nature and manifesting body-mind mechanism for you, called yagya, sacrifice. Why else would they come here? You would have to get a little taste of the ocean of nectar, amrit, or higher wisdom or higher consciousness, to know how that makes the earth pale in comparison. Why they're so enamored of divine reality and so able to give things up, non-touch yoga, detach from things. It's not even a problem for them anymore. It's not like, oh, it's so hard to detach from this dented tin cup, you see, or from that pack of cigarettes, or from that TV, so I can't give those up. See, these are weak souls. For these illumined souls, they don't want those things. They just don't want them. They weren't attracted to them in the first place. So they stand as great exemplars for how to be free, how to be bold, how to be fearless. Otherwise, we wouldn't sing songs like that, would we? Jai Tripurari, Gaye Hum Saba Mahima Tere. Jai Vireshwara, Jai Tripurari, Gaye Hum Saba Mahima Tere. Jai Ho, Vivekananda, Lunjadanu, Mahima Tihari. Jai Ho, Vivekananda, Lunjadanu, Mahima Tihari. Vireshwara, Jai Tripurari, Gaye Hum Saba Mahima Tere. Yes, it's about the bold and fearless soul of Vivekananda who came here in the age of Kali, in this dark age of darkness, and brought these Vedantic teachings. Not only that, like Hanuman, he jumped the ocean in a modern age and came and brought these teachings to America and England and other European countries. Why did he do that? We didn't like him when he came here, and neither did the Indians like him bringing their wisdom to us. See, there were a lot of traditionalists over there. The Christians defiled him in the papers, and he got letters from people back in India saying, "Why have you taken this teaching to the untouchables in the West?" He said, "Because I have no caste. I can't lose a caste because I'm free. I'm beyond caste. I'm beyond religion. I stand at the head of the Vedas. The Vedas are in me." So this is boldness. This is fearlessness. In the face of antagonism from both sides, you see. How does a yogi walk? How does he speak? How does he eat? How does he hear? How does he think? So forth. Is the question asked in Uddhava Gita by Uddhava to Sri Krishna. Basically that idea is that he's the same in pleasure and pain, heat and cold, and in fame and infamy. The same. Imagine how hard it would be if everyone turned against you. How would you feel? See? Would some of these come dancing back on you? Depression, sorrow? See? Or would you just say, "I'm the Atman"? They will wake up. Forgive them. See? Like as if you were on the cross. "Oh Lord, forgive them." See? They just didn't understand me. So those 9 impediments are physical, mental, intellectual, and philosophical, intellectual, philosophical, and spiritual. Those last 2 particularly are your spiritual impediments. Inability to make progress and backsliding. You start to study, or you start to get up a meditation practice, or you start into take initiation and start practicing the mantra. Whatever it is that you do as a practice, you give it up too quick. You can't make progress in it, and you backslide in it all the time. So those are very hard. And guess what? They're hard to begin with, but they get worse because you develop a habit of backsliding. That's why they want you to get into the practice, into this, take your refuge in the Buddha, take hand with Sufis, take mantra diksha with the Vedantas, however you call it in any tradition. They want you to do that, get you through the door, and start practicing. See, start cutting yourself in the image that you are. Thy Father, be thee perfect as thy Father in heaven. He wants you to get yourself in that image. So you can't waste time. So if you start into it and you give it up, there's the first strike against you, see, because it's going to be twice as hard the next time to start in again without that thought in your mind, "I failed at this once." It's very hard. So that's called a spiritual impediment. There are plenty of mental, intellectual ones. The only intellectual one is there, Bhranti Darshana, confusion. That is basically about what? About my nature, about the nature of the world and the nature of God and the nature of my soul. I have distortion. Bhranti means distortion or delusion about the nature of things. So I don't know that God is eternal. I don't know that my soul is one with God, and I don't know that the world is unreal, changing at a billionth of a second. Those three things I don't know. So Ramakrishna said about his 16 apostles, if they know me, who I am, if they know who they are, and if they know what the world is, I don't have to teach them anymore. They will be free, and I can go on and fry other fish. 5 million of them to date. That's about how large the Ramakrishna movement is right now. In a very short time since he passed away, 1886. So, a great steamliner has gone by. We are the waves. See, dances are the waves. We are singing songs about Vivekananda, and he's only been gone since 1902, I think. So, all of this possible because they took the sacrifice to come here. We're here together only for that reason. Otherwise, where would we be? In which Sangha? Or would we be in a Sangha at all? Probably be a Sangha. So, dull mind ends right about there. And restless mind, that is sometimes focused, sometimes restless, picks it up there. In accordance with non-touch yoga, which you're heading for, you'll see that. So here, with restless mind, you apply the limbs of that I was just speaking of. Pratyahara, you want to get your mind empty, blank, no thinking aloud, no vibration in my mind. I want to make it clear and clean, a perfect eye into the Dharma. So, non-thinking, non-touch, right? It's one of the things you're going to have to master in order to get to the non-touch yoga is no mind. I'd be able to shut down my thoughts whenever I want, like I do in deep sleep tonight. Only I don't do it on my own auspice. Nature takes me over. Ignorance takes me over in my deep sleep tonight. I don't want that. I want to be master of all my states. The A, U, and M of Om are waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So I have to master those, all three of them. So I'm going to then use this, these 5 aids to steadiness here. Utsaha. Somebody wrote me today and said, I am Utsaha. Good, good. That means enthusiasm. I am very enthusiastic. As one of my beautiful Hindu students says once in a while, I am very keen to know this, Babaji. I am very keen to know this. So, funny, a Westerner has to turn around and teach an Indian. You see, that's the sign of the times, right? We learn from the Swamis, now we have to go and back to India and teach others, see, so that everyone gets spread around everywhere. Teach is not really a good word. Share would be better. Enthusiasm, then, and sahasa, courage. We just sang about that. Jai Vireshvara, Jai Tripurari. It's courage, see. Courage, courage. Be courageous. Is that the lion, the cowardly lion? And dhairya, steadfastness. Adhyatma vidya, seeking wisdom. And mahat seva, service of the great ones. Those are the 5 aids to steadiness. That is, you begin to become an apostle of Christ, or a direct disciple of Ramakrishna, or take on a great teacher, or a great ideal, and you begin to serve them. We had a question this morning at Satsang live streaming just about that very thing, becoming an exemplar and a helper for your teachers. Now, the 7 modes of mastery are just above that. Practice the 4 aids. And those are things like being good to other people, compassionate to other people, and I think Krishna puts it in the Gita something like have empathy for the suffering, have happiness for those who are joyful, have reverence for those who are illumined, and have indifference for the evil. That's basically how he puts that kind of teaching in the Gita. Contemplate the inner light. Now, these 7 modes of mastery are very beautiful for the mind that's beginning to leave restlessness behind. Meditate on the inner light, anyone can do that. It's sort of like saying meditate on Om. Now, there are many people who have not taken initiation, have never studied a Hindu scripture, but they know the word Om. And there's a benefit to that. They haven't received a mantra yet from an illumined soul and began to practice it or got instructions about it, yet they can sit there and chant Om and it calms them. See? It gets their mind less restless. See? Vikshepa, rajas. So Om is a very powerful influence on people, even if they only just hear it and don't know anything about it. They don't know that it means you're waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. It means your gross, subtle, and causal body. They haven't made all the connections to Om. Like probably the same way John first heard it from Christ and really had to make those connections again. It's not like we don't know these things or have never known them. It's like we've forgotten them. They're all back inside of us. This proves it. So all we have to do is bring them forward. And if you hear a teacher speak about them and you have a knee-jerk reaction, as they say, a mental knee-jerk reaction, then all of a sudden you're remembering your past lifetimes. You're remembering getting teachings like this. And you're probably also remembering or kicking yourself for saying, why did I ever forget teachings like this? Mm-hmm. I get them, you see, but I don't want to forget them. So it made me think of that when I started contemplating the inner light. See, an ocean of sorrowless light. I said that once to one of my students. One of the methods for mastering awareness, is contemplating the ocean of sorrowless light. Who said that? Patanjali, the father of yoga, said it. Wow, that's beautiful. And that was their meditation from then on. They meditated on the ocean of sorrowless light. Now, something about the absence of sorrow really got to that person. See, oh, there's something without sorrow? And joy is not without sorrow, by the way. Pleasure is not without pain. You might have noticed if you've lived long enough. So you have to forbear. Forbearance is the default zone of the wise and of the illumined soul. It'd be a very beautiful statement. So you have to fall back, even the great souls have to fall back on forbearance. Until then, you have to actually be manning up, as we said, and facing off the beasts, those trials. And you do them in typical non-touch yoga fashion. Patanjali says, as I said, he was a great healer on the physical level too. If you get a cold, then you don't react to it. You do not say, I have a cold. That's why people walk around and don't say anything about their cold, because they never want to say, I have a cold. If you finally force it out of them, they'll say, my body is a little ill. But they will not admit to being having disease, because the Atman cannot get disease. And they are the Atman. They are the eternal soul. There's nothing else than that. There are none of these other things. That's why you learn them. That's why you're dissolving them. That's why you're giving them up. That's why you don't want to touch them. You want transcendence. You don't want to mix anymore. See? It's an unholy matrimony. You want to be yourself. And once you are yourself, then you can attach and detach at will. That's what my teacher used to say. Because you're free of dangers. Other people can't do that, you see. Because, say somebody, I quit drinking for 12 years now. I remember a student of mine. But then one night went to a party, you've heard the story, took one drink, that was it. Back on. Is it on the wagon or off the wagon? I don't even know what it's called. See? Mm-hmm. And they were caught from then on. And I didn't see them again in class anymore. So, those are some scars in your mind. Very deep-rooted desires that if you haven't gotten rid of them by the light of spiritual practice, they will surface again, if not in this lifetime, another. It all depends on whether you still have desire for that thing, or if you really do not have desire for it anymore. You have to be very frank with yourself about that. If in the case of alcohol, you catch a whiff of it and you go, ooh. And you don't have a desire for it anymore. Or cigarette smoke. You see, some of the things that, again, people have a hard time giving up. They should have never started in the first place. So these things that you have to let go of at the non-touch level, very basic, but they get more and more subtle, you'll see as they go forward. So contemplating the inner light is a very beautiful method for mastery. Breath control is another. I would say it's only effective if you can connect the breath, your in-breath, your held breath, and your out-breath to the word. Again, A is your in-breath, U is your held breath, M is your out-breath. The word is everything. Read the first 12 slokas of the Mandukya Upanishad. Actually, there are only 12 slokas in it. It's all about Om. So every Triputi can be connected back to A, U, and M. Sometimes they spell that O-M. Don't get confused. It's just philosophically more correct, A-U-M. I even spelled it that way for space here. I think I put it here for space. So A-U-M is that philosophically correct way of putting it, and it goes with all those Triputis that you need to study about yourself. So in this case, in-breath, held breath, and out-breath, if you connect it with that, then you know where the prana is going. It's not just a matter of watching your breath. That's an early exercise. Get over it. Watch your breath in order for you to settle down, right? Because you have a restless mind or a dull mind. But then philosophically connect prana. You want to tame that Garuda bird. That's a big dragon. People are talking about taming the dragons, right? Well, we've got a dragon for you to tame. It's called the inner dragon of your own life force. And it carries souls in and out the body, sometimes out of this center, sometimes out of lower centers, but for the devotees, out of higher centers, and for the luminaries, out of higher centers. For the past masters, out of the highest center. That prana is working in and out through hundreds and thousands of little passageways called nadis. Your human body has hundreds and thousands of gross passageways, right? And this earth out here has hundreds and thousands of rivers and creeks and canyons and rivers. Don't you see the connection? It's all channels. The whole thing is about channels and containers. If you do a puja, you have a container for this, a container for that, a container for that. You look at the picture, it's contained in a frame. The whole thing is about holding consciousness. But you're not seeing it yet. So you do the worship, and that teaches you that. I'm circling the incense around a container for consciousness. I'm pouring water from a container. See? You have to school yourself all over in the basics. Only in the basics not of worldly knowledge, but in the basics of spiritual knowledge. Paravid, higher wisdom. So this is all very key to this kind of practice. Breath control would be one of those great steps in which you can connect the dots. It will connect you to the flow of prana, and you're going to value that very much when it comes time to take your last breath. You will have mastered the prana by then, you know where to go, and you know what's waiting for you. This is called a conscious death, and you can't have a conscious life until you've had a conscious death. A conscious death means dying to all of this, not touching it anymore. It's called, and here's that forbidden word no one likes here, renunciation. I mean, detachment, it can get a little closer to that one with the Westerners. Yeah, I think I can detach, that might be good. Renunciation. Oh no, I'm not having any of that. Get thee behind me, you know. They should be getting all unreal things behind, but the one thing that's really real and valuable is renunciation. Give it up. That's why you're bound, and this whole bliss is waiting for you. And as soon as you give it up, you feel it. Gee, that feels better. I'm not dull anymore. I'm not restless anymore. I'm not even sometimes dull and sometimes restless anymore. I'm beginning to feel balanced, ekagra. I'm beginning to feel of one mind. You're not going to realize that one spirit until you feel of one mind. So breath control is a big one, and you know this is turning into a class on yoga. I'm sorry, because yoga is such a powerful darshana. It's the darshana of practice. Vedanta is just the darshana of here's the truth, deal with it. I'll give you the skinny, the dope, you know, and now you have to go somewhere and realize the non-duality of it all. But yoga will take you the whole way as far as the actual nuts and bolts of the practice, the dynamics. And so we give retreats on it. But this is a sort of hearkening back to that retreat where we took 10 of these charts and went through them in 3 days. You probably remember that. And I'm using it this time next to the dissolving the mind stream chart because that's so much connected to that non-touch yoga that you need to understand. We don't understand the seers that have the non-touch yoga, and we don't understand the non-touch yoga itself. When they come amongst us, well, Ramakrishna put it nice. It takes a jeweler to know the value of a diamond. If you take a diamond to an eggplant seller, he's going to give you 5 or 10 pounds of eggplants. You take it to a weaver, he's going to give you a bunch of yarn. Yeah, I'll take that. But take it to a jeweler and you're rich all of a sudden, you see. So in that way, we have to become jewelers. We have to realize the import of not only the souls and seers, the saviors that come to us, but we have to also realize what they teach and how valuable it is. Then we're jewelers. And then we can apply it. So that's what yoga is very good at doing. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha, you're going to have to first get your mind calmed down. See? Not dull calmed down. And certainly not restless. But get it balanced. Because from a pure mind, from a balanced mind at least, pure mind is later, but from a balanced mind, the whole world turns balanced. You might have noticed. When I'm in a good mood, the world is my oyster. If I'm not in a good mood, the world's a horrible place. It's all back to the mind again, isn't it? How I feel, how my mind, what shape my mind is in. In any given day, yes, 24-hour period, but watch your 2-month periods or your 12-month periods, see, your 12-year periods. If you can have that kind of detachment and witness those, you'll see the gunas working, you'll see what Buddha saw under the Bodhi tree, and you'll know why he wanted to get off the cycle and how he managed it and how he came back and told you there is suffering, there's a cause for suffering, there's a way out of suffering, and I'll give you 8 ways in which to get out of suffering. The 4 Noble Truths, they're called. See? That's all India. Buddha was not a Japanese or Chinese man. In fact, Buddha as an Indian and his predecessors, all his Sangha, see, his inner Sangha, went to Japan and China and Tibet and Burma and Ceylon and Laos and Thailand. That was all India spreading. And it didn't spread by lifting a sword, crusade style. It spread without lifting a finger. It spread through ahimsa, nonviolence. The most marvelous spread in any religion in the whole history of our world is Buddhism. We cannot find an equivalent like that. Turned people into vegetarians, made them give up animal sacrifices and stuff. Just, pretty much the one instance that we know of in religion, besides ancient India before Buddha's time, and of course Buddha came out of that, where religion was with a capital R. It was affecting what it should have been affecting, you see. It was itself. So, all praises to Lord Buddha. Now, contemplate the alambanas. I started out the class pretty much saying that. Start with earth, meditate on it for a few days, a week. Take it all apart, earth in every way you could possibly think of it. And then think about what earth is in your dreams. After you've seen it out here, in all its many forms, trees, metals, whatever, then take it into your dreams, and then take it into your deep sleep state. What happens to earth in my deep sleep state? This is the dynamics of concentrating on an alambana. And then you have to do it with water, and then you have to do it with fire, and then you have to do it with air and ether. And now you're the knower of the 5 elements. Congratulations. You're a knower of the 5 elements, not just a user or an enjoyer, see, or scared to death of them. When's the next tidal wave happening? When's the next earthquake? The next earthquake is you quaking in the corner of your own house, you see, because you're waiting for the next newspaper headline, for the next catastrophe, for the next unreal phenomena that you should be the witness of, but your TV is acting for you. Why did you give way to fear when you're birthless and deathless? Isn't that clinging to life? Fear of death, isn't that the lowest hell you can fall into? And you've fallen into it when the thing hasn't even happened yet. It's irrational. It's ignoble for the soul, who's perfect and pure, to fall into that kind of thinking. And thinking is what gives it its start. You might have heard, thought is father to the deed. Some great soul has a big, huge, a great means powerful in this case, has a huge vendetta against humanity. He goes into his subtle state. Don't you think he's going to think, how can I visit wrath upon them? And don't you think that's an effect of a thought later on in another lifetime, when hundreds and thousands of people die in a tidal wave? Good things happen by good thinkers, and bad things happen by bad thinkers, and mixed things happen by mixed thinkers. It all comes from thought. If you want to put it this way, intelligence. But is your intelligence mean? Is your intelligence mixed, or is your intelligence enlightened? That's what I'd like to know. Because enlightened intelligence is the most marvelous thing in existence. Most marvelous thing. If you were to go close to the Word, you would see a light coming off it. That light is intelligence, pure, unadulterated. You get close to that, it's like getting close to a sun. There's no darkness. So no ignorance around the Word. It's all intelligence, pure intelligence with a capital I. Great name for God, Sat Chit Ananda. Let's look at the Chit part of that, you see. Let's look at the Sat part of that. Let's look at the Ananda part of that. Well, the Chit part of it is intelligence, your thoughts. And so that's one of the main three aspects of a Triputi that they named God after, or that got named after God. So intelligence is very important. So contemplate the alambanas, all five of them. Then these are alambanas next. Connect your senses with them. Then these are alambanas, the properties of the senses, the subtle senses out of which the gross senses came, the subtle elements out of which the gross elements came. And then the prana, the fourfold mind, the cosmic mind, those are all things to meditate on. Sometimes they might say, just meditate on non-dual reality, or just meditate on Om. Fine. But the dissolving the mind stream meditation wants you to solve everything, wants you to know that everything has come out of your mind, settle that mind, then meditate on divine reality. And then you won't have mixed results. Do your homework. You've been trying to meditate on non-dual reality for how many lifetimes? Don't you keep backsliding? Are you making progress in it? Maybe it's because you should have considered all of these steps in between. That's why Ramakrishna said, if you jump from the lowest step to the highest step, if you're a good high jumper, then you won't ever know what the steps in between were made of. And if you go back, you'll find out they're made of the same thing that the upper and lower step are. Brick dust, lime. You see? In other words, it's all consciousness. It's all made of consciousness. But you didn't know that. You only said God was real and the world was unreal. And that's as far as you went. Or God is full and the world is empty. But you didn't prove it to yourself by all the steps in between. By knowing air, earth, fire, water, and ether, how it came out of your senses, how the senses came out of your mind, how the mind came out of the great mind, and how all of it came out of the Word. It's not that hard to do, see, theoretically. So take it in and use it as an object for meditation. That's Patanjali's, one of his 7 ways in which he gives you to suss out divine reality. The hound of heaven is now on the trail, and it's gaining ground. It's not backsliding anymore. Another one is recalling dreams in deep sleep. We probably said enough about that, so I don't have to go into it very deeply. Recalling dreams in deep sleep. Meditate on that. Then contemplate your Guru and Ishvara. Ishvara is the chosen ideal. For the Shaivites, it's Shiva. For the Vaishnavas, it's Krishna. For the Shaktas, it's Divine Mother, and so forth. For the Christians, it's Christ. Meditate on your chosen ideal, God with form. Because if you meditate on God with form, you get what's in God with form. You begin to look like your ideal. Did you notice out there? People who love Jesus look like Jesus. People who love Buddha look like Buddha. Races are born out of that. See? It's a spiritual physiognomy going on there that very few people can read anymore. Who can read it? The Guru reads it. You talk about reading the Akashic record, that's nothing. That's back there with the prana. He's talking about reading the soul of human beings. That's much better than matter. I mean, you're talking about reading sentiency. Reading insentiency is a matter of mere semantics. Try and read a soul, their diagram. So try and look at the human blueprint and see what's going on there. That's very difficult. There are many surprises in store for you when you do that. Pleasant and ugly. And finally, meditate on the spiritual ideal, or on a spiritual ideal. 7 beautiful ways in which Patanjali calls 7 methods for mastery. Gives you a choice. I think I'll take meditating on this sorrowless ocean of light. Goodbye, everyone. See? Gone. See? Well, I think I'll take a more slow route. I'll take each Salambana and flesh them out. Find out where they connect. See? So, no slouch here as a thinker on any level. Lord Patanjali, we salute him. Now that takes us up to about 15 minutes left in our class, if you're still with us. This is a lot of wordage and a lot of teachings. We like to inundate the mind with it. We practice the inundation method in Vedanta, not the sieve method. So we don't trickle down a little bit and say, digest that, come back, trickle down a little bit. We deluge it. That's a quick way, you see. All ignorance will drown. What did you do to me? See? And it's a sponge method. So you take your brain home afterwards and you squeeze it out. You see, and that night you take what's there. But in the meantime, the deluge method has gotten rid of all these doubts and fears and all these unhappy things that we just looked at. Where did they go? I don't know. I won't feel illumined yet, but I'm sure relieved. I think I'll go back for more. So, you've reached ekagra, one-pointed mind. And there are 4 levels of yogic mastery here. Now is where, oh boy, here's where we get to the essence of the thing, or get closer to it. There is, from bottom to top, you start getting inner vision. Pratama Kalpika. And there are 2 words that come up here, Sankalpa and Vikalpa. Kalpika means imaginings in time. So you can see that the Indian seers looked at this and said, all of this is we agree now, all of us in India, all these darshanists, all of this is a projection of mind. We are the mind-only schools. So now we have to look at the dynamics of the mind. It's fantasizing, it's projecting, it's pretending, it's dreaming. There's a whole host of things which the mind is doing that aren't yogic, because it's producing things that are unproduced in their origin. You cannot produce something without taking it away from its essence, right? Because if you say, I'm going to produce that or I'm going to create that, it means that it was unproduced and uncreate before you did that. So its true nature must be acreate or unproduced. So you're pulling it out of the hat from somewhere. It convinces you, number one, that nothing doesn't exist. So let's put the void and nihilism away. Nothing doesn't exist. I know a physicist friend of mine that has a t-shirt that says that on it. Nothing doesn't exist. There's always something out there. It's just so subtle you can't see it. Like the kingdoms of heaven within you. See? So that's the first thing you think about in that kind of a... And the second thing you think about is, everything is non-produced. Where am I pulling it from? So the mind is projecting things. It's pulling things out of somewhere, and it's making unreal things look real. via the projection process. Do the pictures on a screen from a projector up there, are they real? Did a bomb explode in the movie and did it rip the screen at all? Did people cry tears of pathos and it wet the screen afterwards? You went up there and checked out the screen? No, the mind's projections are unreal. And so, kalpika, see, basically, pratama kalpika is a different kind of projection. It's not fantasizing and projecting and pretending out of desire. That's vikalpa. And it's not projecting things from the mind out of dream and fantasy and all that. That's sankalpa. But it's now pratama kalpika. My projections have been traced back to their source. Like Christ on the road, Paul on the road to Damascus. He saw Christ. That's a projection from the Christ for him. See, it wasn't the real Christ there. It was a projection from Christ's subtle body that gave Paul a vision. So the vision is not the real thing, but you're now tracing all of your thought vibrations back to a source, which is probably a matrix. A matrix is something, as you know, that's an intermediary for something else. So before your matrix was the ego, see, I wasn't doing a very good job of reflecting the truth. Before that, your senses were the matrix. Oh, they were really doing a poor job. See? I mean, I can look at the moon and touch my eye, Gaudapada says. I see 2 moons now. So my senses are defective, right? It's a mere touch can cause them to be other than what they are. So I look at my senses in regard to everything that they can show me, and it's all external. It's outgoing by nature. That's the senses. So I need to get in touch with my inner senses. Seeing in a dream, hearing in a dream, tasting in a dream, touching in a dream. So basically I can stop touching in any kind of dream. Non-touch. Can't touch this. See? So this inner vision that's coming to me now is a matrix of a higher nature. It has more intelligence in it, and that's the next one. Ritambara pragya. Rita, lovely Rita, she would call her. She's not just a meter maid, but she's the truth. That's the oldest word for truth in any language that we know of. Rita is truth. So Ritambara, it's the truth of wisdom. See? It's truth reflected through wisdom. So this is what yogic mastery begins to consist of. Patanjali takes it and makes it the first samadhi you have. Wisdom samadhi is the first real samadhi you have. You see everything inside of yourself in a flash, and it stuns you. And you go into a jhana samadhi, and you might sit there for days. Just by the vision that everything exists within you. Kingdoms of heaven are within you. Christ in the wilderness. So that is called Savitarka and Savichara Samadhi. Nirvitarka and Nirvichara Samadhi. Those samadhis are wisdom samadhis. And so you now have entered the land of yoga mastery. See, it's all about wisdom now. Before it was all about matter and senses. And then it became about prana and metaphysics. See, physics first, then metaphysics. But then it started to become about mind and thought and intelligence. And when it turned more towards the intelligence, more inside of itself, Ritambara pragya. Pragya is a powerful word for wisdom. It's actually one of the great sayings of India. 4 of them is, Buddha named it Pragyaparam, the supreme wisdom. But you have Pragyanam Brahma, right? Pragyanam Brahma. God is supreme intelligence. One of the greatest sayings, 4 greatest sayings in India, in the Upanishads. So that's how high an estimation and esteem they give to intelligence, especially when it's pure. Just like pure mind, pure senses, even a pure body. Those are good versions of those things, you see. Same with intelligence. It's going to be very, very eye-opening, if you know what I mean by that. If thine eye be single, you shall know the truth. So there's where you're headed. 3, pragya jyoti. There's that word again. Mastery of the mind. And jyoti means light. So the light of intelligence dawns on you after this wisdom comes to you. And finally, atikranta bhavaniya. Total absorption. You get your first absorption meditation. Shankara said, the hailstone of my mind fell into the ocean of Brahman and dissolved there. That was how he described Nirvikalpa Samadhi. In fact, in another sloka he says that fathomless, boundless ocean of pure conscious awareness, replete with its swell, nectar-like swell of the Atman, true soul, into which my mind fell like a hailstone into an ocean and got completely absorbed there. Atikranta bhavaniya. Total absorption. Can you bring yourself back from that? Can a moth fly out of the flames that went into the bonfire? That absorption is the death of everything. And if you've given up touching it and owning it prior to that, then you'll have a conscious departure. If not, it's going to be fraught with rebirth. So there are still, even as high as that is, you can see there are still some higher attainments to go, and we don't have time to them, but this will whet your appetite for yoga, Advaita Vedanta sadhana called yoga and its connection, and also will cause you, I hope, to look into the Mandukya Upanishad and the great commentary that influenced East and West alike by Gaudapada, Sparsha Yoga, he calls it. It's the whole commentary that follows the Mandukya Upanishad, superlative, like the idea of non-origination and non-projection and so forth. All these ways that he uses to bring non-duality into comprehension for you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So here I think we shall close with a chant, and then I'll do the announcements for, before I sign off, we sign off, then we should say that live streaming classes will continue again in Portland, in San Francisco, in about weekend after next. Next weekend, no live streaming. I'm trying to calm my mind down from philosophical, get down to these practicals. So no live streaming next week, no satsang next week, but on the following Saturday and Sunday, we will have San Francisco will be coming to you live stream from there. So all of you can be there with us live on SRV channel. And thank you to the Advaita Academy for making it possible through this equipment that we can live stream these beautiful teachings of the Dharma, even from the West, because a lot of it's going on in India, of course, and other countries, but the West is still trying to catch fire and not burn out too quick. Get some holding power, some stick-to-itiveness, and keep this going as a practice and realize that great truth in these teachings. So here, let's end with a chant. Om Bhadram, Om Bhadram, Karnibihi Srinayama Devaha, Bhadram Pasyemya Akshabirya Jatra, Sthirairangayish Tushtivamsastanuvir, Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu, Swasti na Indra Vrida Shravaha, Swasti na Pusha Vishwadevaha, Swasti na Starksho Arishtanemihi, Swasti no Brihaspatir Dadatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual. May we hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while worshiping the Lord and Mother of the universe with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.